This video is about how criminal records might affect employment in the state of California. Unfortunately, if you have a criminal record, it may be harder to get hired, paid, and promoted fairly. But you're not alone. 1 in 4 adults in the US has a criminal record. And having a record doesn't mean you're unqualified for the job. If you take steps to understand your rights, responsibilities, and your limitations, you can arm yourself with the knowledge necessary to secure the right job for you. In California, a lot of legal changes have been made when it comes to protecting people with criminal records, so it's getting easier to land jobs even with that record. Before applying for work, you should know that certain jobs have legal restrictions that disqualify people with certain past convictions from working in those positions. In general, these are jobs where you would have access to private or sensitive information like financial records, vulnerable people like children or the elderly, or high security places where there might be a greater risk of harm to the public. Some examples include airport security screeners, federal law enforcement officers, defense contractors, prison transportation personnel, port workers, bank employees, and childcare workers in federal facilities or agencies. Also, certain types of jobs require you to have a professional or occupational license from the state. And such licenses have their own legal restrictions, and they can be difficult to get depending on what's in your record. There are over 200 professions in California that require a professional or occupational license. They range anywhere from barbers and cosmetologists to security guards, contractors, teachers, nurses, doctors, and lawyers. Professional and occupational licenses are granted and regulated by different licensing boards, agencies, and bureaus. There are over 40 in total, each for a different industry. They're mostly under the control of the California Department of Consumer Affairs. Applying for a professional or occupational license generally requires submitting fingerprints, paying application fees, and proving that you meet certain educational or work experience requirements, which are set by the particular licensing board to which you're applying. The licensing board can deny your application for a license based on a criminal conviction, but only if your conviction is substantially related to the qualifications, functions, or duties of the business or profession. Some crimes, such as those involving physical violence or fraud, dishonesty, or deceit, are presumed to be substantially related to any profession that's regulated by the California Business and Profession Code, so be mindful of that. Although each board is different, most take rehabilitative factors into account as well. These are things like the amount of time that has passed since your conviction, whether you successfully completed parole or probation, whether you've shown remorse or change in attitude, alcohol or drug counseling, your pursuit of education or vocational training, the stability of your family life, and then also your community involvement. If the state of California has given you a certificate of rehabilitation, then a licensing board can't deny you a professional license based solely on your conviction. Now, let's talk about your rights and what the law has to say about discrimination based on criminal background. There are some laws in California that protect applicants with a record from employment discrimination. While it's sometimes legal for an employer to not hire or fire you because of your criminal record, an employer's hiring policy is usually illegal if they have a complete ban, sometimes called a blanket ban, on job applicants with records. By law, the correct and legal practice is for the employer to consider the individual circumstances of the person applying for the job and the job itself. The employer's hiring policy should only exclude convictions that are job-related for the position and consistent with business necessity. This means that the employer should look at a number of factors when considering your convictions, such as the nature and seriousness of the conviction, how much time has passed since the conviction or completion of your sentence, the nature of the job that you're seeking, including the specific duties and responsibilities of the job. An employer has to give you notice that you were denied employment because of your criminal history if that's their decision. And they also have to give you a chance to show that they should make an exception for you based on your individual circumstances. If you believe that there's an illegal ban in place It's important for you to gather all of your job application materials and other evidence that supports your claim. You can also contact an employment attorney or agency that protects employees from discrimination. There are also civil rights laws that make it illegal for employers to treat you differently from other applicants or employees based on your race, sex, religion, national origin, and other protected characteristics. These are called protected classes, and that's an important thing to be aware of as well. Now we're going to talk a little bit about AB 1008. With the passage of AB 1008, which is called the Fair Chance Act, which went into effect on January 1st of 2018, almost any employer with 5 or more employees, whether public or private, has to wait to ask about your criminal record until after they've given you a conditional offer of employment, meaning an offer that they can still withdraw if they need to. This means that they cannot ask about your record on the job application or during the initial interviews. They also have to wait till they've made that conditional offer of employment to run a background check. If an employer asks about your criminal record prior to offering you a conditional position, they're not complying with California law. Now let's talk briefly about background checks. Employers often conduct background checks on job applicants and current employees both. In order to be prepared, you need to be highly proactive about learning strategies for how to present your skills and credentials and your personal background, understanding and cleaning up your criminal record, which there's a whole video about on the Mass Liberation Learning platform, and knowing and protecting your rights. Employers are allowed to use background checks when they're deciding whether to finalize an offer of employment, to promote or reassign, or to keep you on as an employee. Private background check companies are allowed to provide background checks, they're also called consumer reports, to anyone the agency reasonably believes will use the information for employment purposes. Background check companies cannot report information about convictions, lawsuits, unpaid judgments, tax liens, or any other negative information if it's more than 7 years old. Always request a copy of the background check report. You have a legal right to receive a copy of your background check that's used by your employer, and it's recommended that you always request a copy of that report. Instead of hiring a background check company, employers can also directly access your criminal record and other public records by conducting their own in-house background check on you. You should know that employers are not required to get your permission before running an in-house background check. And you also have the right here, too, to receive a copy of any public information that the employer is viewing. And it's recommended, again, that you never give up that right. If an employer decides not to hire you based on information in a public record, the employer has to give you a copy of those public records. An employer is not required to give you copies of any of the non-public information that they used in their decision, like information that they gathered by talking to other people that you know. Finally, let's address preparing for questions about your criminal record. First, know everything about your official criminal record. Knowing absolutely everything about your criminal record means that you know not only what's in your record, but also what's not in your record. You should be aware of all the arrests, convictions, dismissals, and sentences that are currently part of your record, but you also need to know about any information that's been dismissed or expunged or sealed so that you know that your employer can't see that information. Also, know what employers might find out about you. To know what information an employer can find out about you, you should do research on yourself. Doing research on yourself is how you'll see what information exists out there about you online. Not just what's on your criminal record, but also anything that's public, especially, on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. You can start researching yourself by looking online, calling your references before you give out their names and numbers to prospective employers, and also getting copies of your criminal records. Though great strides have been made in eliminating discrimination based on background in California, there are still many companies that have illegal hiring practices. It's very important that you know your own rights and that as you advance in your field, you make sure to act with principle and according to the law in your own hiring practices. Thank you and good luck on the job search.